Do you remember? Do you remember? I remember all those years.
Oh, I remember. Oh, remember. I remember. Oh, I remember.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Do You Remember podcast, the podcast that takes us back in time as we do a deep dive into something that's a little bit nostalgic for me and a little bit nostalgic for the guest. My name is Adam Anwar, I am your host, and today I'm joined by stand-up comedian Paul Campbell.
Yeah, excited to talk about Suede.
Excellent. You do realise we're talking about the band, right, and not the material?
Yeah, it was a good joke straight off the bat there. Yeah. To be fair, I've never really thought much about Suede the material. The band has been like when people mention the word Suede, I just think of like a wailing noise.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So we're going to be talking about more specifically the album Dog Man Star. So for those people who might not know, can you just give us like a brief synopsis of what this album is?
It's the band's second album. It was they got really famous in 1993. Suede. They were tipped, like the start of Britpop, they were tipped to be the next big band, and they kind of were, but they had the lead singer Brett Anderson and Brendan Buckler. They were like kind of the legendary sort of like typical singer-songwriter Lennon and McCartney, Richard and Jagger type of setup. But it was their final album together because like Brendan Buckler left after that, and it's just like the first one was kind of quite a bit different, but quite mainstreamish. But this, I think, is just beautiful that they were quite a mainstream band by this point, but it's gorgeous and just really, the songs are just so sad and very different to what you would expect from a band that had kind of been hyped by all the record companies to like be top of the charts. And they weren't top of the charts with this, but it was just beautiful. The songs that to me they're just all like they're like little stories, they're little dramas. They're very personal songs, I think, to like the lyricist like Brett Anderson, but they're not really about him as such. And I just absolutely love it. And to be honest, right, I've not really. I've come into Sway quite late, to be honest, really, because I had just thought of it like a man making like screechy wailing noises. And been I've been like cool for 1993. Whereas like I've started reading in lockdown. I've been reading his books and I've started listening to his music. And like I really do love Dog Man Star. And so yeah, for me, it's just like it's an album where because people do have an idea of Suede, and it's kind of I think maybe quite a cliched one about being quite a pretentious band, and I think it is quite a pretentious album, but I just love it though, and yeah, so like maybe it's like to me it's like a musical album that's not it's not a musical production, but it could literally in a weird way they could easily have Suede the musical, and this would be the soundtrack. So there we go. Why? What do you think about? Why did you want to talk about Dogman Star in particular?
So we'll get into all that soon then. So like I'll just ask you a question first. Like, how did you first hear of Suede? Like you mentioned you get into them a bit late. How did you first hear of them?
I used to really like Britpop bands, probably, but not even when, because I was born in '84, so when Britpop was around, I was about 10. But I never really listened to. I was vaguely aware of Oasis, but towards of when I was a teenager, got really into like Britpop-ish type music, like Blur and Oasis, and bands similar to that, like Elastica. And then I just heard about Suede like on documentaries because they were kind of had a similar. They were kind of like the start of Britpop, and but I'd never really like because there's a lot of Suede songs that I've heard and I didn't know it was them. Radio like Beautiful Ones and She's in Fashion, and there's lots. There was loads of them. I just didn't know it was them and I'd listened to a couple of the songs, like, but but I'd never up until recently really like really thought of them. To be honest, I just thought, oh, they're kind of like posh Brit poppy band, maybe a little bit pretentious, and it was basically right just before lockdown. Me and my girlfriend went in a bookshop in Charlton, and like I was reading, I just was like reading in the music section, and his, as it's called, Cold Black Mornings, his autobiography just seemed really interesting. And so I like read about 10 pages in the bookshop, and I got it on Kindle, and that's just got me in. I'm just really interested. I just think it's just him as a writer. I think he's like, I love his use of language, and I don't know. It just fascinates me. But I don't even know whether I like him or not. But it just fascinates me, and it's been really good in just because I've had time to listen to stuff and read stuff. Um, so that's kind of how I got into Suede very, very recently. But like the thing is, I've read about a lot of the songs before I heard them, and but like Dogman stuff and me, some of the stuff I'm not a fan of, but I really do like. I just think like it's so like that is everything about him coming together like perfectly. Like there's like I think they've done some other songs that I think are a bit like they're all clearly quite pretentious and are a little bit lightweight, and they've not got much to them, or it's them trying a bit too hard. But I just think every song on there to me is just like kind of perfect in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting that like you find them more interesting than you'd say you're more of a fan of them. What would you say like is your appeal then? What is the interest to you that you find so interesting about Suede? Because and I'll just quickly tell you from like my backstory of like my knowing of Suede. So like my brother, he's like 15 years older than me, and like he was a fan of like that genre of music, that kind of indie rock kind of scene, like Britpop and what came before Britpop, and like. So he was a fan of Suede when I was a kid, but like I was about when they first burst onto the scene, I was probably about 5. So long story short, he moves to Japan, and I end up with like all of his like media, so like all of his DVDs, all of his vinyls, all of his CDs, all of his tapes. So slowly, as a teenager, after he'd moved, I started to go through it all, and then that's how I discovered Suede after knowing about them for years, and that's when I really got into it with the album that's got Animal Nitrate on. I can't even think what it is off the top of my head, but. So yeah, what do you think the appeal is that makes them interesting to you?
I think it was. I'm trying to think now. I like how that. Well, like particularly like the album because it's like it's just so different, right? And to a lot of other stuff, it's kind of like quite a. What I find interesting is that I find pretentious people really interesting, right? But sometimes, like when they create art, it is really good. But sometimes when it goes wrong, it's like awful, but really interesting to listen or watch or look at it or whatever it is. And him as a man is quite interesting because the reason why I got into listening to the music is because his books. Like I read the books and I thought they were really good and. I I thought, but he kind of creates an interesting, like, portrayal of himself as being like a poor kid who grew up in like half poverty, but at the same time has been portrayed as a posh boy. And his music, you would think listening to him that he wasn't particularly like working class, and so it's just interesting and also the way he writes about his songs are quite interesting. About how because he talks about difficult moments in his life and how that influenced his song, but also about how this song on the surface isn't about anything personal to him, and so it just made me want to listen to the music. And to be like to some extent, I find it impossible to say what the appeal is. Right, it's one of those. I just really like reading his books and listening to his albums, and I, I think one of the things with me, right, is that, but it will be the same with everyone. It's just like the way that society is going. Like I'm too scared to have an idol anymore, though, because they just turn out to be awful people, right?
Yeah.
So I find it better being an enthusiast and like being interested in someone rather than being like, oh my god, they're an amazing human being. They're like, because I don't want to create gods anymore because because I don't know. He seems like he's actually that his morals are okay actually, but you don't know. And so, but I think it's because I'm older. But I am really so maybe like 10 years ago I would have become like a super fan.
Yeah, it's weird that like I don't know. It's hard because it's hard to put your finger on what the appeal really was. But I was really fascinated by the way that he feels like so ahead of his time. Like his ex, like is it Justin Friedman? Is that what she's called?
Yeah.
She said like the first time she met Brett Anderson, she didn't know if he was a boy or a girl, and like he really like fascinated her, and like that would have been like a very brave way to kind of look in like the early 90s. Like now it's more acceptable. Even still, like it's a brave thing to do because some people will always have like negative things to say about it. But like for him to like come across and be not specifically androgynous, but like very kind of
Definitely
you
kind
couldn't
of under.
you couldn't really put him into a box, and like I was really fascinated by that and the way that like he kind of had this bravery to kind of stand alone and be this front man who didn't conform to like for example, you take like a Liam Gallagher who's like around the same time, same era. He's very much of that kind of masculine kind of lad culture kind of vibe. Whereas like Brett Anderson really doesn't seem like he's in that same box.
I think that's part of the appeal that to me they're very, very unique because they seem very much themselves, which I think is like, especially if you're listening to a lot of someone's music, you want that where it feels like it's different. And like,
Yeah, definitely. You want to listen to someone who they're not going to be like everybody else and just give you the same kind of songs. They're going to give you like a different kind of style and like a different kind of writing that you can relate to that no one's given you that product yet.
Because he said that like when he was in kind of like poverty, he said for like in his books he said that it was kind of quite late to making it, like in terms of like rock stars go. He was kind of in his mid-20s or a bit later than that maybe, but he said like his image was never like intended that he just bought a lot of stuff from charity shops, and he said it was kind of like brought to his attention that he was quite androgynous. So he said, and in a way I can kind of get because it feels sort of quite natural in a way, like he wasn't though. I mean, it didn't feel like, like as you say, like
it's not a contrived image, is it? It's not like he's gone out and gone, do you know what, I want to, like, I want to be a pop star and I want to stand out, so I'm going to do this. It feels like he's being himself.
It's not like the Darkness who really who were like, yeah, we're going for that image. It was very organic. But that's the thing. This is partly why I'm fascinated by it, though. It's because I've read all his books, and he puts forward such a strong case of like how he portrays himself, and I'm fascinated how true that is, though. And that's why I like listening to his music because it's just I don't know. I just get fascinated in certain. I just say like I would never like. I try not to have any idols anymore, but I get fascinated by certain people and like just trying to figure them out almost.
Okay, so seeing as you're coming from it from like that perspective of someone who's really got deep into them by reading the books, what's your kind of impressions then of like Anderson and Butler and then the band in general?
Well, what I really liked about his book, and it's kind of inspiring, is the fact that he wanted to be like a rock star, like for years, but he was kind of rubbish, and it's inspiring because like I'm doing comedy, and like it was like someone who like because I can recognize him very strongly in like myself and others when he talks about the early days of Suede, where they're playing to like two or three people and they weren't particularly good. They had some good moments, but they weren't particularly good or inspiring. And he just like persevered so much. whereas Brendan Butler, like, because it was him and Justine who were kind of formed a band together, and Brendan Butler came in later, but he was like pretty much the finished article straight away. He was just naturally really talented, and he said it took a few years for him, like him, to get up to Brendan Butler's standard. Like basically, 2 or 3 years for him to play catch up. Whereas like he till his vocals and his lyrics like match the quality of the music. But I think I don't know. I think, like I just say, as you were saying, Matt, I just think they're really unique, and I think that it's just because maybe because I've only really come to them now is why I'm so interested in them. Like maybe if it was a gradual thing where I just listened to the albums every now and then, I wouldn't be so kind of fascinated by them. But I just think it's because they're really different. And I do think it's nostalgic because because especially reading the books, it's interesting to think of just how the world was like 25 years ago when like music was different as well. And I feel like now I don't know how they would go on now if they were starting off now, because they were hyped up, so they were helped by the press, but I think it worked so hard to get recognized by the press, like as to get recognized as a good band. But I just don't know. In fact, how do you reckon they would go on now if they started off as a band?
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because like in those days, if you were an up and coming band and you would either have some like EPs or you'd be doing like at the same time like live gigs, but those wouldn't be like readily available to everyone. So it'd be like a word of mouth kind of thing. Like you might know someone who like had their EP or whatever, or had their early singles, or like had been to see them live, and then like they said, "Oh, they're really good. Go check them out." Whereas now, if you're trying to get into a band, like even if they've never done a gig, but they've made one song, that's online and it's online for everyone to hear. So like the process is a lot different. And I've not read the books. I've actually got one here right in front of me. I can't remember which one it's called. Let me just go have a look at it. It's called Love and Passion, and I think it's like a Suede authorized biography. And I've not read it yet, but I did want to go through it. And yeah, so I just kind of feel like, especially if you're not good yet, and in those early days, like you're saying, Brett Anderson wasn't that good and he wasn't up to Bernard Butler's level, like that would be out there for everyone to hear straight away from the very first song, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because he said that kind of more or less, if I remember correctly, like maybe 91 or something, was like when they were starting to get their act together, and pretty much most of the first album was ready. But he said that they suffered the effect of people remembering them from beforehand. So it took a while to convince people that it's, you know, like especially like the press, because I think then, as you say, it was the press. The music press had more power because it was them who created the word of mouth, because there was no social media, and like
Well,
you couldn't find out for yourself.
I can imagine what it was like as well, because just to talk about like any kind of art scene on like a very minor level, like he was probably playing in front of like the same bands in it like over and over again, you know, in the same towns. And like just like on the comedy scene, you see like comics all the time. And it's very easy that like people are judged on how you first saw them. Like you have to improve a lot before someone really recognizes. I mean, I've only been doing it for 2 years, but like I know it takes a while for people to change that opinion from everyone else, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, like the first impressions count so much, and then and I suppose it's other people's opinion. If people talk about someone and say they're good, then because the thing is, if you don't think someone's good, but then loads of people who you're kind of friends with, and if you respect their opinion, they say they're good, it's more likely to make you think about it. Whereas if it's kind of set in stone that they were pretty awful, then or average, I think then yeah, it would have taken a while.
Yeah, so I could imagine the same thing on a local music scene as well. Like Brett Anderson's not up to that level, and then everyone's heard him for years singing, for these years building up to it, and they go, he's not gonna live up to much. He's not gonna do much." And then, so I could see why it it'd be hard to break through. But like I say, it'd be much harder, I think, in these days, especially for bands, because like I know bands who like they've never gigged, but like they've released music online and that's out there for everyone to see. That's the kind of route that you have to go down now, kind of the SoundCloud route, or like on Spotify and stuff like that. Whereas in those days, it would have been like grafting out like at live venues.
I mean, I don't know how it works with music exactly, but with comedy, like you need to do comedy live, really. And so I imagine it would be so hard to get good if you're just putting stuff on SoundCloud and people are just not listening to it, or if people listen to it, because I don't think you'd get many people being that honest. Like you might do. I know the
Definitely,
internet is a place for people to be like not just honest but like brutal. But I just can imagine there's quite a lot of bands who are starting off who are a bit average, who people that know listen to it and they just would listen to it and not say anything.
exactly, and not just like how hard it is for like as a comic to people always say like, oh yeah, I'll come and see your show and stuff like that. So like imagine if you're a band and they're saying, oh yeah, I'll listen to your song. You finally convince them to listen to your song. It's your first song you've ever done. It's not that good because it's the first one you've ever done. And then by the time it comes to song 2, 3, and 4, they're not that interested anymore because they listen to the first one. They've already judged you and they don't want to waste the time on the next one. So I imagine it'd be a lot harder now.
Oh yeah. I guess so. Yeah, I do think with a lot of bands, it's so hard to judge how they would do now because there's the right. Yeah, but then I suppose there's such a thing that there's still. It would have taken a certain amount of luck to have got successful then, or at least to have been eventually been seen by the right person. So I think probably it's similar in that way. But but he got rich. I think he probably wouldn't have got as rich as he had unless he'd got like massively commercial. I don't think they would have got as rich as they did because he said that was quite one of the things that he said that was one of the reasons for his downfall, that he got rich very quickly and he just didn't sit well with him.
Mm. And also, just to touch back on like bands nowadays and stuff like this, I'll listen to there's this guy called Finn McKinton. He does like this series of videos on YouTube called the Punk Rock MBA, and like it's got like thousands and hundreds of thousands of followers and stuff like that. And like he really knows his stuff. And he was saying recently that the reason that like punk rock bands aren't that good nowadays is because like the same people who used to be the frontman in like punk bands, those same kids who would have done that back in the day, they're just becoming rappers now because like it's hard to get hold of like can you imagine how hard it is to get a band together to practice every day? He's saying it's so hard to do that, but like if you want to be like a rapper on the SoundCloud, all you need to do is just like download a program and then like just rap into your microphone and then release it, and you can literally get famous just off that. And it's a much easier route to go down. And he gave examples of like young rappers, like I think like Lil Aaron and Lil Tecca were two of them, who like they have that punk rock kind of sound, but like they completely like they're just SoundCloud rappers. And like people aren't using that same band formula anymore because like they found like a much easier formula. If you want to become a lead singer, you don't need the band anymore. Just download an app.
Yeah, I guess like that's it. But weirdly though, if you think specifically of Brett Anderson, you couldn't imagine him being a rapper.
That's true, but can you imagine like Brett Anderson now if he was like a 16-year-old boy, like he very well might be like influenced by what he sees on the internet around him and goes, do you know what? I'll try and put my spin on it and do my styling of it.
True. I mean, that's it, because that's what's interested me is that it seemed like it got to like a very specific kind of unique style, but it took ages for him to get there. And I suppose it would be the same principle if he was doing rap, though. I mean, it would be weird. I'd love to hear him rap, but like, yeah. But I'm sure, like, if it started to get, it would probably sound like. He would probably sound totally different though if he was a 16. He would probably rap if he was a 16-year-old kid now and he was learning to rap. He would probably sound different than if you just asked him to rap now as he is. But yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
This is an interesting idea in being a rapper, but yeah, I guess I didn't know that. The thing is, I'm so out of touch with like modern music because Stam. No, I think it's an age thing. Do you keep your finger on the pulse?
I try to, but like honestly, no. Like I find it really, really hard. The thing that I do is like at the end of every year, like people like the Enemy and Pitchfork and places like this, they do like a top 50 songs of the year, top 100 songs of the year. So I'll go on Spotify and like I'll listen to those for like basically a month, not like non-stop, obviously, but like every now and then when I feel like listening to music, I'll just put those on, and that's kind of my process of kind of keeping in touch. But even then, like I'm listening to the songs that have already been out for 6 months, so they're kind of falling out of the rotation. But that's how I keep semi up to date with new bands, is just through lists like that. But I think it is an age thing, and I think generally like music is geared towards teenagers, isn't it? Because like if you like imagine your band like in your mind, sorry, there's a band and they're playing in front of an audience, jumping up and down. It's not 50-year-olds, is it, that's jumping up and down? It's teenagers, isn't it, that's jumping up and down, and like uni students and that kind of age.
Yeah,
I don't think. I mean, I don't think like typically 30-plus-year-olds are really getting into new young bands out, because that's the other thing as well. A lot of bands, new bands, when they come out, they're in their 20s and stuff like that, and they're singing about stuff that's relevant to you when you're that age, and they'd written it years before, so they're singing about stuff that was relevant to them in their early 20s or in their teenage years. So again, it's not really as relevant to us. We can still enjoy it, but you feel it a lot more emotionally, and you'll be a lot more connected to it if you're that 18-year-old and you're seeing a 21-year-old singing, you're going, yeah, that guy's like me. Whereas we look at them and go, oh, that guy's a kid, he's making good music, but I don't relate to it as much.
no, I guess so because that's the thing, right? Like even like listening to like older music, but like which written by people who are in the 20s. Like now it's like it feels like like even listening to the Jam or someone, like you think, oh god, it's just kids singing about, not in a condescending way, but you know what I mean. It feels like you can't really. I find it harder to relate to it than it did a few years ago.
Definitely. I did a podcast with Andrew Marsh, from No Money in the Bank, and we were talking about Blink-182, Enemy of the State, which I think is a really good album. But when like you start to sift through like the words and stuff like that, like I still really, really love that album, but like it was like a real eye opener of this was weird. Like I remember when I just left uni, I was 22. I was like really deep into Blink-182 because I mean that I'm like the perfect age range for them there, like at 22 years old. But now, like almost a decade later, listening back to that same album, I still enjoy it because it holds that nostalgic feeling to me. And like you can still relate to some of the things you're talking about, but I don't connect with it the same way I did 10 years ago. And the weird thing is like kids now who listen to like Blink-182, they go like, this is old music. Like it'd be like the equivalent of us listening to a band from like the early 80s. Like we just see it as old, whereas they like, I don't know. It's really weird for me to think of Blink-182 as old music.
You know what? Part of the reason, funny enough, the reason made me think that maybe one of the reasons why I do like Suede is that they're not really like that, even though they were in the 20s. Like it holds up, like because it's not because it's written about things like what's he written like Hollywood stars, middle-aged women, bankers. They're like the kind of he's writing about issues. I mean, no one really wants to relate to a banker, but what I mean is like he's writing about like adults, like people who could pretty much be like any age, like in the 20s up. So it kind of, in that weird way, it feels more universal because it's not
Well,
like you.
yeah, that's a really good point actually. And speaking of that, let's do it. Let's break into these tracks then. The album starts off with introducing the band. What do you think of this track?
I like it. It's very much like the Beatles. It does make me think of the Beatles. Because in his book he says it's just like a chant. It was very much like a prelude, like a chant, and it reminds me of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. So I really like it, just because it's like it's never meant to be. I don't know. It might be someone's favorite song, but it's never meant. Because I love albums and I love songs are bits that are on albums that could pretty much only exist if they were on an album, and it feels like that's part of it. And it is like their own version of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. Like it does sort of like sum up kind of what they're about, really. That like so a lot of what it's about, like them creating slightly fictional world. What do you think
Do you
of
know
it?
what? I am exactly there with you. I've got 2 notes here on this song. The first one says, nice intro. The second one says, felt like their version of SPLHCB, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So I'm exactly there with you. And like, I thought this for a while. Like, did they do this on purpose to try and like mimic them? But maybe I would just say it's on homage. I don't think they stole it from them, anything like that. But I think it's their homage to Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And like, I think, like you said, it's not going to be anyone's favorite track. The Killers also did like a similar version of this on, I think it was Sam's Town, where like it's kind of like a chanty style song at the beginning. Nice intro. It's the kind of song that only really needs to exist on an album. It's not going to be the kind of thing that you put on a compilation album, the top 20 songs of all time. Nothing like that. But it's perfect to really kick off the album and give you a flavour of what you're going to get going on, and like to kind of set up their, like you said, they're setting up their universe on this album.
Yeah, because he said like, by the way, maybe you want me to give an extract because he writes about all the songs in his book, right? But he basically said it was like a mantra. Like, yeah, so it's right, and I do think it does what it says on the tin, doesn't it? It just introduces the band.
Definitely, like it's very purposeful in that sense, and really does suit its tone. Again, just to touch back on what we were saying before about like being a band nowadays and stuff like that. I read something a while ago to say that bands now, they're doing songs that are shorter because like a big part of their revenue is coming from Spotify. So if they do a song that's 6 minutes long or a song that's 2 minutes long, it doesn't make any difference because a play is a play. So they're doing like a lot more shorter songs because it makes no difference revenue wise. Whereas in the old days, you'd have like an 80-minute disc and then they'd do maybe 10 songs, 12 songs, and it'd fill pretty much most of that 80 minutes. Whereas now, you could release a half an hour long album as long as it's got like 10 songs on it. It's going to do the same purposefully as those old longer songs. So that's something that would really change, and you really wouldn't do it this way nowadays, I suppose.
Then I guess also like because like in the old days, like you'd have paid probably about a tenner for this album, and so it was only half an hour. You'd feel a bit ripped off. So I guess like if you're actually going to actively pay money for something, whereas if you kind of want it to feel like you've got your money's worth. Whereas I think like if you just listen to it for free on Spotify, you probably like you're more likely to get into it if you just listen to a 2-3 minute song. So yeah, I guess. But like yeah, it's just that you're not gonna listen to an album on Spotify and write an angry message to the to the band saying you ripped me off.
Yeah, definitely. It's more digestible as well, isn't it? Like it's harder to get into a song when the song's like 5 minutes long, but when it's like just a 2 minute short song and it's really good, like off the top of my head, something like Norgard by the Vaccines. I think that's like a 2 minute song, but that's like a perfect song to me. Like very short, very sharp, does the job.
What I like about this album is that they're not really into short songs, and I'll bring it up later because, like this said, if we're gonna do it order by order, I'll mention it more later. But like they said that Asphalt World is like nearly 10 minutes, and they said that was like part of the reason why Brendan Butler left, but like arguing over that song length. So
Right. That's interesting because I didn't know that, so we can get into that soon. So track number 2 then, We Are the Pigs. What did you think of this one?
I from what I've seen of like it's one of those where like especially I think it might have been Paul Morley who talks about how they love it, like they love the lyrics like police car on fire, and it's kind of like it does create really nice imagery, and it's like a nice story, like not a nice story, but it is like a powerful song. But if I'm going to be honest, right, this is in a weird way, this is one of the only songs where I feel it's almost playing up to the youth thing about because Brendan Butler says it was the idea of he liked songs about writing songs about tribalism because he viewed Suede and the fans as like a tribe, and it feels like I don't know. It feels dated. I feel it might not be popular with Suede fans because it is talked about still as one of the great Suede songs, but it's one of those that is one of my. I do really like it, but it just feels somehow the sentiment of it feels maybe not though, because it could still be relevant now, but it feels sort of dated the way that it approaches. Because sure, it's kind of like about a group of rebels of some kind, but just the way uh, just the way that it presents itself is, I don't know. It feels a bit like dated, like it's trying to play up to, oh, we're all in a group together, we're young, and they don't understand us. It feels a bit overdone, in my opinion. But like, what do you think?
I thought it was all right. I thought it was. I really see this as like the opening song because like the intro is the intro, but I see this as the opening song. And as an opening song, I think it was good. Like the first song is introducing the band, and then this is like We Are the Pigs. This kind of that collective feel, like this is the band, and we are the like we as like this huge collective, us and the fans, like you say. And like I felt like the last bit where it's like we all watch them burn, with the kids at the end. That felt like, as much as the last song felt like it was a nod to the Beatles and Sergeant Pepper's, that felt like it was a nod to Pink Floyd and Another Brick in the Wall.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It is a good song. It's just like I don't know. I just can't like. I don't know. I just can't take it. I don't know what the right word is, but I just can't like really get into it like the other. Like the others are absolutely adorable, but this song I just think is like, it's good. It is really good. It's undeniably good, but it just feels like it's almost just too much. Not too try hard, but it just feels very much of its time, though. Plus, like, is it weird though that the reason why I don't like this partly is because I could just imagine that there were a gang of like scary muggers and like I don't know. I just have fears. I fear of being mugged, right? And like I just think of that. The more I listen to that song, the more I think, oh God, they mug me, and because it's just all about people setting fire to shit and stay at home and like I don't know. Maybe I don't know really, but that's my interpretation. But I feel like most people wouldn't view it in that light.
No, I think that's a fair interpretation. And let's move on to the next track then. Track number 3, Heroin, which I think is an absolutely brilliant track. What do you think of this one?
Love it. Yeah, it's really good. I just like this is why like it is about. He said it's a song about isolation and alienation. I just think it's gorgeous. Because I love melody and like kind of catchiness. What I love, and I think it's like so much there in the album, like how catchy it is, but like how miserable and grim it is at the same time. And the idea of like adore it. Like I didn't realize this till like I read because I think I listened to this album and then like I read his second book where he talked about this song and it's about it's about like a guy just wanking a lot over porn magazines, but I didn't, even though it's kind of alluded to, it didn't really kind of make, I didn't realize that till he pointed it out, and then it was like, but I still think it's one of those songs that can be beautiful and interpreted in quite a few different ways.
Definitely, I read this song as like someone who's like a junkie for their lover, basically. I mean, obviously, like it's titled heroin, as in like the female, not like the drug, but like she's his heroin in both senses, if you know what I mean. That's how I read it, and like just the wordplay where he's like my heroin come to my slum for an hour, like it's, I don't know, it's so like
That's beautiful. And
exactly. He's like he's really looking forward to it, and like he knows she's the hero. Like he's like putting her on a pedestal, and he's kind of putting him on like a down note because he's saying like he lives in a slum kind of thing. And yeah, go on, sorry, mate.
No, I was just basically going to say what you said. That I think it's a beautiful song because it's almost like slightly, because before I knew what it was about pornos, I kind of thought it was exactly what you were saying, that it could be a song about, because I didn't even know, wasn't aware of the spelling of the title really, right? So I thought it could be about heroin, or it could be about like viewing a woman as like a heroine in both senses. and almost kind of, and it is in a weird way about unrequited love, and also like the weird thing that I think happens when you're kind of a teenager and you think you're in love with someone, but it's actually quite shallow because it's just because they're really like beautiful and you don't know them. You just think, oh, I really like their face. I'm so in love with them. But that in its own way is shallow, but it's just beautifully like expressed in that song. Like just the shallowness of like how he absolutely adores someone, but it's just there. It's a porn star. It's a porn star, and they're probably someone who's been exploited as well, which makes it even more creates even more grimness about it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's that very like kind of grimy, beautiful thing that like I don't know. I can't really put it into words, but yeah, it is just a really, really beautiful song. But how about the next track then? But I actually, Lord, before I go off heroin, I want to point it out as this is like one of the not just standout songs on the album, but it's one of their standout songs. It's not one of their big singles, really. It's not like Beautiful Ones or Film Star, one of the ones that like everyone knows. But this to me is one of their absolute best tracks. But yeah, next track, Wild Ones. What do you think of this one?
I think weirdly enough, Wild Ones, Brett Anderson says that this is his favorite song ever. Like if he had
Wow.
to sum up his best work, he would say was this. Yeah, I love this song. It's yeah, I just think it's that what I like about them is like the drama. It's just I love it. To me, it's like a lot of these songs are, as I've already said, like musicals, and they're not in a musical, and they don't sound so show tuneless at all. But they kind of feel it's so kind of like a mini drama and a film in a song, and this feels just beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Like they kind of uh, begging someone to stay. And again, it's almost a bit like heroin, just like the desperateness of somebody, like wanting someone else, a specific person, and it kind of asks so many questions if you think about like what's gone on, what is it actually about, and yeah, like that. This is also one of my favorite songs of the album.
Yeah, you pointed out a few really interesting things there that like Brett Anderson says that this is his favourite song. I think the vocals on this are absolutely beautiful. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And as a lead singer, I can only imagine that he would pick out this one and say that he thinks this is his best, if nothing else, just for the vocals, because I think the vocals are absolutely fantastic. And you mentioned something else. It's just slipped my mind now. What was it? It's gone. It's completely gone. What did you say? You said loads. I can't remember.
I don't know, but it's so catchy as well. Like this is a song that I've been singing it to myself because I've listened to this album a couple of times, like last week for this, and I've just been singing this song to myself loads. It is such a catchy song, and and again, right, this is one of the songs about like which is quite youthly. It's about being the wild ones, and kind of I feel it's a very much of the idea of like having like quite a kind of crazy lifestyle because you're in your 20s.
Mm, yeah.
It works beautifully. It doesn't feel forced or anything like that. Whereas to me, that We Are the Pigs feels a little bit forced, but this feels just so kind of just natural and beautiful. But and yeah, it's I'm trying to think of any other thing I've said about it. But no, it is one of their best songs, and it's
I've remembered you mentioned how like how basically how theatrical it is, and I completely agree with you. Like if any album was to like be the musical equivalent of ballet, I would say it's this one. Like especially any Britpop album. And this song specifically, like and Heroin before, like they're just so beautifully crafted. And I can imagine like ballet dancers like gracefully moving to this music, and like the grace in the music is just fantastic.
no, I agree. It's very beautiful. The Yeah, because you could easily have like so much. You could have a whole story around that. You could literally have like a script around that song.
Right. Next track.
But
Go on.
was just going downstairs. I had to get my charger. So what did you say? Next track?
Yeah, the next track is Daddy's Speeding. Now, this one, it sent me on a bit of like a weird rabbit hole. So, like, I won't speak too much on the song. Apparently, it's about James Dean and James Dean's death, and like he died in a car accident. So it kind of sent me down like a rabbit hole to like research James Dean's death, and it's like really weird because when he died, he was in like a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever with like a Nazi was with him, basically, someone who was like a German troop who like they brought over after the war because he was good with mechanics, you know, like in that wave of people that was brought over. So like he dies in the car with a Nazi first of all, which is like a weird like kind of point. Then the fact that James Dean was 24, I didn't realize how young he was when he died and like how much of an icon he's still considered to a lot of people. I find that absolutely like really intriguing. And then the fact that the person who crashed into him is called Donald Turnip Speed. Like that is the name of somebody who's gonna crash into you, isn't it? Donald Turnip Speed. Like when I read it, I read Turnip Speed. I was like, I've misread this, surely. And I went back through it and back through it. I was like, no, he's called Donald Turnip Speed. So yeah, it sent me down a weird rabbit hole. This song.
It's weird. I never knew that. I knew he died young, but like, yeah, because I think the thing with James Dean is that he like represents so much. Even if you don't really know his films or know much about him, he just kind of is just iconic, isn't he? And it's not. He's kind of bigger than he was because I think most people who know him or would even use him in conversation to talk about like what he represents probably haven't watched any of his films or really know that much about him. And it's been like the fact he died so young has added to what you're anyone was gonna die young. And for it to like add further to the myth, it would be him. You know what I mean? Because he's like the ultimate, like he's kind of like the precursor to the 27 Club. You know where like all the rock stars died at 27, but that was
Yeah,
like
definitely.
the first one.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that I don't really know anything about James Dean, you know, besides like the vague stuff everyone else knows. But like maybe that is the thing that he was the first young superstar to die, and like he really became an icon. And I'm purely speculating, but maybe that's what it was, that he was the first one to die, and that's what made him this kind of icon for like Americana of sorts, like and unfulfilled potential, I suppose. But yeah, what do you think of the song?
I really like it. He's kind of quite a different one to a lot of. He said it came to him in a dream. Weirdly, he had a dream. He didn't like expand on what the dream was about because it would be quite curious whether it were. Because I was thinking, is it that in the dream James Dean's his dad? But then, I think that Daddy, I think it's basically that it kind of is like James Dean. He's not saying he's his actual dad, but like kind of he was the first real like rebel, like rocker, one of the first actual rock and roll figures, although wasn't actually a musician. And so he kind of is almost like a father figure to that kind of like that kind of spirit of rebellion. But
It's weird. It's weird that you bring up the fact that like it came to me in a film, because I've had this happen to me where like I've come up with jokes in a dream where like in the dream I've been on stage and I've said a joke, and like I just wake up and I'm like, it's never been anything good. Like don't get me wrong, it's never been like earth shattering, but like I don't know, just some shit one liner probably. But yeah, that's happened to me where like I've woke up and gone, that's weird. I just invented a joke in my dream that like it vaguely makes sense, but that's it. So maybe that's what happened to him. He saw himself on stage singing. I don't know.
maybe, yeah. Yeah, it could be like he had because he wasn't specific about whether it was a dream where he thought of the song or he had a dream about James Dean. But but what I like about Suede is that because I'm not necessarily with James Dean, but like I'm kind of fascinated by like old showbiz, like from the 70s, 60s, and 50s. So, and I like that he's kind of really into into kind of old Hollywood, and like I don't feel that anyone, like any other bands at that time, would have written a song like this. Like, not really. They might have done it because I thought it was cool to sing about James Dean, but I don't think they would have done like a really heartfelt song about James Dean dying in a crash. Yeah, and it was just, I feel like the song, it encapsulates the whole like tragedy of it. I just and that it's very weird. He said it was like part song, part sound experience or something. I don't know what the exact quote was, but he said it was. He said like the music, a lot of it was about the music and letting the music breathe.
Definitely. So what about the next track then? We've got the track number 6, The Power.
You know what? Like, it's one of the ones where good. Like, I don't know if not like it's one of the ones that I'm not. It's catchy, but it's not like one of the ones where I've really taken it to heart.
I'll tell you what, I will take over on this one then, because this is one,
Please do.
especially like as a stand-up comedian, this is one that like I really, really kind of like connect with, especially the lyrics where it's like, give me the power and I'll make them believe. It's that real kind of like inspiring self-belief where like you're dying for that chance. Like, just give me that chance and I'll make them believe. Like, all I just need is that opportunity. Just give me the power, and I will do it. I'll be the one who does it. And like, it really, really just creates that sense in me of like, I can't really explain it, but how you really want something and you really have that self-belief that like, I can like when like in anything in life, if you want that next step up, like if you're on a sports team and you're on the bench, you're the substitute goalkeeper, you're like, just put me in the game. I can prove it to you. I'll keep a clean sheet. You know, I'll be the goalkeeper you need. Just give me the power and I'll make you believe. Like, it really resonates with me that.
I never thought of it like that before, but yeah, I get that. It's like, yeah, he's trying to succeed and to get on and feeling that that you can do something and you really, really want to do it. Yeah, it's
Definitely.
that.
So how about track
Yeah,
7, New
7,
Generation?
right, let's do, right. Be honest, like I do like this, but it is kind of like. See, I don't want to be negative because I think it's like, I do think the power's brilliant, and I think we are the pigs. But this one is one of the ones that I feel is quite like not of its time, because you're always going to have new generations. But it is a lovely song, but it's just kind of, it feels a bit like, I don't know, a bit like just I don't know how much
To me, this one is Suede kind of like rolling out the hits a little bit, in the sense that like it's very much like, you know, those memes that you see online, like I made a bot watch 100 hours of Batman and this is what he came up with. Like, this song is basically, I made a bot listen to 5 hours of Suede songs and this is what it came up with. It's unrequited love, it's all that stuff. It's all very like classic-y Suede stuff. I'm not against it. I'm not hugely for it. I think it's a nice track. I don't think it really says anything different, but for the sake of having an extra song on the album, I'm not against it.
Yeah, it's a good catchy song, but like, I'm with you on that. It does feel like that though. Yeah, like, oh, it's a new generation, but it don't really talk about the new generation. You know, it doesn't say anything. And the thing is that I feel it set itself such high. The album set itself such high standards that just doesn't. It's got the, like, it's catchy, but it doesn't really have any of the power of a lot of the other songs.
Yeah. How about track number 8 then? This Hollywood Life.
I really like this one. Again, it's like looking at old kind of showbiz, and it's so relevant, like especially to the comedy world now, because it's about like the director's couch sort of thing, and he's kind of this is just like a gorgeous drama of like wanting to be successful, but at the same time absolutely hating like the reality of it, and kind of feeling used and exploited, and it not being worth it at all. But I just think it's, and he said it was a lot about the music industry as well. But I really like that song, and I feel like it's kind of timeless because I know it says Hollywood life, but it could be about so many like different types of any kind of different types of ambition and like the idea of having ambition and just the reality of it.
Definitely, because I 100% get with that with this song as well. That where you really want, because often we want to do things that we're fans of, and like then when it actually comes to the reality of like how the sausage is made, kind of thing, we realize, oh, is this actually what I want to be involved in? And then I completely see it. The only note I made on this though is the beginning. I hate the sax at the beginning. I don't know why. I kind of hate saxophone. The only time I've ever enjoyed it is in a Careless Whisper. That's the only time I enjoy a bit of sax. Besides that,
Like jazz.
no, I'm not a fan whatsoever. So that sax at the beginning, dislike it. The rest of the song's really nice, but just that sax grated on me.
Yeah, but no, I did. I agree. It's not like really necessary the sax, but no, I just feel like it's one of those that it's like one of the just absolute solid songs on the albums, and it's what it's all about. Just properly exploring things that are so no other band would explore, and that is just a really relatable song about something. And it's, as I say, it could be so relatable to comedy, but I feel pretty much any industry, and it's so much about corruption and ambition. Like, I really like it.
Right then, track number 9. We have The Two of Us. Now, this, I'm going to say right off the bat, I think is an absolute masterpiece. I think this is my favourite Suede song ever. One of my very favourite songs ever. What do you think of this song?
I totally agree. I think it is. It's like so moving. Like that's the beauty of music and words together. Just the absolute sadness of it. The I'm trying to think of had something actually like worthwhile to say, but I can't remember now. But it's just so sad, and it's about what's annoying is this annoyed me because I'd heard it and I loved it, and then I found out it was about bankers and like two banker, but it's just one of those like universal gorgeous songs about just about like a broken relationship, but it's still like there being something you don't. There's just something that it still exists, even though the relationship might be broken. It's still just because of the power of it and of the past. It still is a thing, and that's what I do. Yeah, I think it is beautiful.
Definitely. Just kicking off with the opening 2 lines, lying in my bed, I think of you. The song goes through in my head, the one we both knew. And like that to me just conjures up images of like, I don't know, like an 18-year-old, like for example, like just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of like a lost love, and like that song is like playing, like that's their song, quote unquote, and like it's just like an emotionally strong song that like even though I don't really relate to it in that sense of I've been through this, so I'm going through this now, like I can really relate to it in the sense of like he's painting such a vivid picture. It's like when you hear certain things about racism in the old slave days and stuff like that. That didn't happen to you, but like you can really relate to it, and you can really feel that pain of someone, can't you? And like it really disgusts you in the opposite sense of this. And this is like written in such like I don't want to like, compare the two things, but just to give an example of something where you can feel strongly without experiencing it. This did like that opposite to me, where like I could really, really sympathize with this character that he's being in this song, lying in his bed and all that stuff. And I thought it was so masterfully written. The music in it, the piano is absolutely gorgeous. Like the vocals, perfect. This to me is a perfect song.
I agree. Like the lying in my bed, that's one of the like when I first heard this, maybe I didn't forget about it, but it was one of like because I'd only heard it like once and maybe like for about a week though. After that, I had it in my head, just that lying in my bed and thinking, "Oh my god, that's gorgeous!" Because it just says the way he sings it. It just like sums up so many different possible things of like lying in your bed miserable, and that's kind of feels relatable to so many people in so many different things. Just like regret, like just bedridden by
Yeah.
like life basically, and I just think it's gorgeous. Yeah. Um,
Definitely.
and
I mean, we've all been there as well, like lying in, like the lyrics towards the end where like it builds all the time. It's like lying in my bed, watching my mistakes. I'll listen to the band. We've all been lying in bed and like whatever it is, like whether we look back at something that we did and we cringe, or whether it was an argument that we had and we're like, oh, I wish I should have said this. Like we've all been at that moment where we're lying in our bed and we're just thinking about something that we did wrong. Do you know what I mean? Or whether it's a bad gig that we have and like it plays on our mind, especially when you first start out, like your first few gigs in comedy that can really like get to you. The masterfulness in this song, and like it really really is just an emotional piece, and like it kind of takes on a like a personality of its own that is so strong.
I agree, and because it's about that's the thing. What I like is like it's kind of irrelevant to me almost because he said it was about like bankers, but then but he realized he was actually writing about him and Brendan Butler. Like, but it's so irrelevant all of that in it because it's just about a relationship, but not. And I like how he kind of it's almost exclusively not a romantic relationship because it's not. It's just about any, and that's why it feels so universal because it could just be about any type of relationship
Yeah.
you'd have with anybody, like parent, friend, like literally anybody though. Like it just yeah, it's just it is. I agree. It easily is like one of my favorite songs on there. Like in general, yeah.
So how about moving on then? Track number 10, Black or Blue.
This one, right? I feel I've got a lot to say about it. Yeah, because when I first listened to the album, this was the song that I loved so much, and I love it's so melodramatic, and in a way, I feel like that's how I feel sometimes. Like it's like the inside of my head that I'm like really I feel melodramatic over very small things sometimes. Like if I've just embarrassed if I've just embarrassed myself by dropping my shopping at the checkout or something like that, right? This happens loads because I always forget to use a basket, right? In my head, I feel like really dramatic. And it feels like I know it's a strange thing because it wasn't about that, but just the sound of the feel of this song sums up how I feel at those moments when I'm being like
Yeah.
really upset about something. And this song, I loved it so much. I was gutted, right? Brett Anderson said that it was his least favorite song and he wished he'd not put it on the album. And like, I was reading in preparation for this, I was reading a couple of reviews of the album and they've all said, oh, this is rubbish, it shouldn't be on there. It's just like pretentious. But I just love it. I just think it's so atmospheric and it just gets you. It's one of those really where like I think the Two of Us is a better song because it has like it feels like meaning. It's got like such like relatable, specific meaning, and the words match the music perfectly. But for me, it's just the feeling of this song that I think so like powerful. And I just really like it. I love the drama that's created, even though the words probably are a bit pretentious. But I like it's one of my favorite songs on the album, and as I say, I'm gutted that everyone else seems to dislike it. So I'm very curious what you think.
I like it. I think it's a really nice song, and like the way I read this song is like I see it as kind of like an anti-racism song. You know, I don't care if you're black or
Yeah.
blue. You know, like, and I honestly I think if this album came out today, especially with the current climate, this would be the song that everyone would cling to and be like, "This song is fantastic." Especially in the current climate of everything that's going on. And obviously there's the line in there like, I don't care for the UK tonight. And like, again, that's like a very relatable sentiment right now. Like a lot of people are kind of not losing the sense of Britishness, but they're kind of losing the sense of this kind of British pride because it's being like co-opted by like the far right quite often, and like kind
Yeah.
of the image is being quite poisoned in a lot of people's minds because it's being kind of overtaken by like wrong elements. And so I can read. I mean, obviously, I'm reading it with this time frame. The people who would have reviewed this album back in the day are reading it like from a much different perspective. But I mean, I think this is a really nice song.
I think it's gorgeous, and it was like because it was about he went out with a woman who's from who's like from Indian heritage, and he was talking about. He said it was based on the racism that he got, like from being with her, and like she got, and then he also kind of got secondary, and it was like I just think I just love the mood of it, and it's almost it's weird. Like to me the drama of it is what I really like. But you're right, and it makes it even a better song because it is so relevant to now.
Exactly, it's that old Romeo and Juliet kind of love story as well.
That's
like
what he said. He said he based it on that.
Yeah, I don't care about the outsider influence. It's like it's me and my partner. That's all I care about. Like, if you can't get on board with this, then like your opinion doesn't matter. And I think that's really, I mean, that's a timeless sentiment. Like Romeo and Juliet was written 7 billion years ago.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that, it's such like a never-ending sentiment. But like, especially like the thought of like mixed race relationships in the early 90s was a very contentious issue. So like the fact that he wrote this song, I think is very brave. And I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing obviously that relationship didn't end up panning out, and maybe that's why he didn't want it on the album and he thinks he shouldn't have wrote it. But I think it's fantastic.
But I just say I love the drama. It's weird that the drama just the feeling of it. I feel like it's one of those that I'd heard before though. Like I'd heard years ago before, but I think it's just the sound of it, but then when you read into it, it is a beautiful song. I like and what it talks about, and I was just like upset almost that in general, like it's not one of the popular ones, but I just think it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But like I wanted to tweet. I don't even know if he's on Twitter, but I wanted to tweet Brett Anderson about it and be like, like how could you not think it's a great song?
I think it's one of those that like through time it's going to keep like meaning. And this, like I say, especially in this climate, if someone was to stumble upon this song now, like, or if like a blog posted it or like a journalist posted it, I think like it would very much like not catch fire, but like I think a lot of people would like get behind it and really appreciate the sentiment behind it. But maybe in the early 90s, different time zone, wasn't as relatable to a lot of people, wasn't really on people's minds. Because you know, like what a lot of people like, if it's not in their mind, they kind of see it as virtue signaling or something like that sometimes. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing to me, right? Because what really appealed to me was the feeling of the song, right? Rather even the words to begin with, it was the feeling of the song, right? And it just, I feel like it's not a virtual signaling song because it's got so much to it.
I agree.
Because it's a song in its own right. It's not done. I feel like he wrote a song based on his experience of the racism of his girlfriend, but it wasn't done with the purposes of really necessary. It was probably with addressing that, but it wasn't for the sake of it. He did it because it was like because of the truth of the song and the drama of it, and that's why I think it's a great song, and that's why I think it's just not virtual signaling. I think it's like because I think David Brent has done so. Like I know it's a bit of a gay shift, but I'm sure he's written like in the character. He's come up with songs that are clearly like a really like contrived and cynical attempt to address racism, but are just wrong. But this is like the absolute opposite. It's such a song in its own right. Okay.
Definitely. How about track number 11 then? The Asphalt World.
Right, Asphalt World. I really like this. It's as I said, this is the song that, like, because I would love to know, right, if they were around now, or if they would do a 10-minute song. This started off now, but I just think it works beautifully, and like it shows how good like Brendan Butler is. And he said it's about like Justine Friesman and how how he was like obsessed with her, but she was cheating on him with a woman, and he kind of it was. But then the song was. I just like how it builds slowly and why, because he said it was right that it was a 10-minute song, but he said at first he didn't think it would be a good idea to have a 10-minute song on the album. And but Brendan Butler insisted. He was like, it's got to be this way. And just the way that it builds with the different sounds of it. And he's like just like a gorgeous drama in itself. And I feel like there are like I'm so glad they've done it though, because I feel like there is quite a lot of very long songs about, and Suede or a band who are that kind of song is perfect for to do at least once.
Yeah, because they're such a theatrical band, and they do have that kind of more not orchestral, but like they have like a grander sound, I would say, than like your typical indie rock band at the time, and the typical Britpop band, you know. Yeah, I think spot on.
Because like Oasis, they were, I think, Standing on the Shoulder Giants or the Be Here Now, it were where they had really really long songs, but that was just drug influenced essentially, and like
Yeah,
kind of just egomania of thinking, oh God, we'll play it'll be fine, we could get away with playing long solos. But this really is what I imagine like long, why you could have a 10-minute pop song, because it just earns every second of it, in my opinion. It is just a really, really like lovely song, and and it just adds more. It kind of is in line with the theatrical feeling of the album, but it's just something different to it, and it's just
yeah.
a
So
real.
how about the final track on the album, Still Life?
I think it's just a beautiful song as well. I know I keep saying this a lot, but I really like it, and I like how kind of quite domestic it is, and it reminds me a little bit of Heroin, because it's kind of about like feeling sort of like isolated, but you've given yourself to somebody, and it's sort of quite defeatist as well, and I like. I like that he was kind of like exploring just different areas, because it's kind of like about seems like an older person, and uh yeah, and it sums up sort of like just like the monotony of life, and it when things the idea it's still life where just that nothing moves forward, and it's but he does it in the problem is like, as I found when I've tried to do various things, it's quite hard to express like the feeling of nothing happening and boredom without actually being quite boring. But
Mm.
obviously it's not boring, it's beautiful, but it's like it's there. Yeah, I think it really is. Again, it's a very different song. It's like the album, but it's not really like any other of the other songs. Um, Yeah, that is kind of it that I would say about that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be quite brief on this one. I think it rounds the album off quite nicely. I don't think it needed to do too much more. I feel like this is like a very lovely sounding album, like quite theatrical, quite artistic. Like, I mean, a lot of music you will say is art, but I think this is like quite an artistic album. And I feel like this album just like rounded it off nicely. But what do you think like the legacy of this album is then? If like someone was to say like, what do you think of Dogman Star? What do you think the legacy of this album is?
Um, well, firstly, I would say the idea of pop music, but just unashamedly like exploring like new depths, really, and
Yeah.
in a because it feels like an album that has. I mean, it feels a unique album, but then it doesn't feel that unique. In that, I think definitely since then there's been a lot of bands who have attempted similar stuff, but to me, this feels like the type of album that's massively succeeded in what it set out to do. And I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
I think to me, if anyone ever asked me like, can you give me an example of Suede? I would always go with this over like the self-titled debut album that's like quite, I think it's so different sounding, and like it still sounds like Suede, but it's to me it sounds like so different compared to this. And I think especially this being like the last album that they did together, Butler and Anderson, I just feel like it's like it was what the Stone Roses' second coming should have been in terms of like that was the Stone Roses' last album. It was the breakdown of Brown and Squire's relationship, but you could really hear it in the music in a negative sense. Whereas this, you can feel the breakdown of the relationship, but it's in like a beautiful sense, and they're still going to make a masterpiece on the way out.
yeah, because it was like said that it was. I don't know if you mentioned this, but or you have, but it was like written, but they didn't write it together. Like they used to just send each other. Like he used to, Butler used to send Anderson like his tapes, and then he used to send him like his lyrics and I think some vocal tapes or whatever. So it's in a way that's probably like why it was so successful, because they worked alone, but then like still combined like the effect of it. It was it's I agree, and I think it's like I don't know whether how classed as Britpop Suede would be, but there's just no album, any Britpop album like this though. It would have to if they were classed as Britpop, it'd have to be one of the best ones.
Definitely, definitely. So, what would you rate it out of 10 then?
I think as much as anything, right? Clearly, there's bits that I don't like. I'm probably like 1.5 maybe, because I just think like, what else are you going to compare it to? Like, to be fair, it's probably not my favorite album of all time, but it's it is definitely one of them. But it would be 9 to 10. Because I think what else are you going to compare? Like, I don't think there's much you can get much better than like. I guess like obviously there's a debate about what the type of people that it's all subjective about the type of music people like. But I feel in terms of setting out to really achieve something and having like that particular sort of like ambition, like you're not going to get much better than that though, because they really have achieved. Like it's so good to get an album of that depth, and it's still like a pop album. It's just they've done it so well that like I would have to say it would. I don't know. I would. Let's say 10. It's like I'm saying it's the best album ever, but maybe 9.5. I'm going for. How about you?
I mean, that's fair. I would say 9 and 9.5 myself, because I've really, really kind of fallen in love with this album. Like for years, I slept on it for years and years and years. I think I've had it since about 2006. I've had this album, and like I never really paid too much attention to it. I was just listening to it in like rotation on my iTunes and stuff like that. I never really listened to it as an album. And then about a year ago, I started to go through the NME's top 500 albums of all time, from one downwards.
Yeah.
And then this album was on it. And then
Number.
I can't remember what number it was, but I think it was definitely like in the top 30 albums. So I got to it pretty quickly. And most of the albums, I would listen to them once and then discard them and just stop listening to them and just go through them on Spotify. But this one, it captured me. I think now was the right time for me to listen to it. Talking about like music at the right time earlier on, listening to Blink 182 when I was like 22 years old, that was the perfect time for me then. This album wasn't really touching me at that time, but stumbling back upon it in the last year or so was a perfect time for me. And I really, really fell back in love with this album. And yeah, a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's really, really strong. But what do you think of the other albums then?
Well, not what right. I like the first album, not as much as this one, but I do actually really like the first album, and I
Mhm.
like the other kind of the B sides like Insatiable one, and but and this like I do think but for me, right, the Brendan Butler and Anderson was like the best two albums. But
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the fourth and fifth album. I really like though the one that reminds me most of this album of Dogman Star. The other albums Wade have done is like the latest one. Have you heard that Blue Hour? That's got a lot of theatricalness to it. I really like that.
Do you know what? I've not, and I was thinking this last night I thought to myself, because we knew we were recording this, I thought, I want to listen to some Suede reviews of this album just to see what other people think of it. And I couldn't find anything on YouTube whatsoever. I couldn't even find an interview of like Anderson and Butler talking about it. So I just listened to a video of them talking about the latest album, The Blue Hour. So I thought I really want to listen to that. So I'm gonna go back and listen to it. But yeah, so far, no, I've not.
But I don't. I think that's the nearest. It's not as good as that, but he's a Dogman Star. But it feels like the nearest, and it probably is my second favorite album of theirs, like the latest one, even though Butler's not on it. I just yeah, but I really like it, but I feel that part of the reason why I think this album's so good is that maybe it was just like the drama and the turmoil of them breaking up, but it was just like the perfect storm for them. Like just for them both, like as artists, like or musicians, like just because it's so easy to see how like Brett Anderson and even sometimes in his book comes across as like really pretentious and a bit try hard, and how also like how you were like saying that new generation is sort of like swayed by numbers. Like I feel
Yeah.
like the future albums were very much like that though, where he just kind of mentions a few kind of like he'll talks about like nuclear war. He just talks about like paving stones or something. He just like kind of a few sort of like Suede buzzwords. It felt like that, whereas this has some of those kind of like buzzwords or whatever in, but they've got meaning. They're there for a reason, and I just feel like the best thing that they've done in like literally like their lives work really, because I just don't think I think like it's very easy, especially for Brett Anderson stuff, to see if he's not on it or it's stuff that it's not his best work, then it can seem quite contrived and try hard.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So I think we've covered this quite well today, Paul. So cheers for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug before you go?
Right, I'm trying to get back on doing my Twitter a lot. It's called Mars Bar Buddha. And I did it years ago and I really loved it, right? But then I kind of neglected Twitter a bit, but I'm trying to write, I don't know, like that basically. And my page is Paul Campbell Comedy on Facebook. But yeah, that's kind of it really. But yeah, no, I've enjoyed talking about it. Been good.
Right, cheers for coming on. So that's been Do You Remember Suede Dogman Star? I've been Adam Anwar, he's been Paul Campbell, and I'll see you all soon.